What's your question?
I
What are we
know.
talking about today? Like, what is your burning
I
desire?
have a question for you. So, I mean, I own a condo and I want to buy a house. Like, should I keep my condo? Should I sell it? Like, why should I keep it?
Let's talk about the what.
Whatever.
I absolutely love that topic. So, okay, so that's a question that I get asked a lot. And in this market, I think a lot of people don't know the answer to, should I keep something or should I sell it? So there's going to be a couple of variables here. So,
Or are they even asking? Like, I think a lot of people just think they should sell because it's bananas market.
Right. So, and I also want a comparison to, so we're going to talk about that, but I'm going to compare it a little bit to kind of investing in stocks and things, because it's one of my new things that I've been working on. So, okay, so tell me about your condo. What's what do you think? What's the price range of it?
It's like in the $4s.
Okay. What do you owe on it?
$270.
Okay. What's your payment?
Like $1,300.
Okay, so $1,300. It's in Scottsdale. My guess is that probably rents somewhere in the $2,200 to $2,400 a month range. Some people might be thinking, well, that would be a great VRBO in the Scottsdale market. The reality is it probably isn't, because it's in an HOA and there's probably some restrictions for short-term rentals. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah, there is.
So we're going to take the VRBO thing off the table. So do you have some money saved for down payment on the next house?
No.
No. So
I'm making this like very easy for you.
I know, right? No, yes, no, yes.
I mean, I could, but I want to hear your answer if I don't want to spend any of my money. Okay,
so there's a couple of different things. You could potentially refinance your current place. There is some complication with that, with refinancing it owner occupied right now if you're going to buy a new house in the next 12 months. So there's some lender guidelines that they don't want to see you refinance as owner occupied and then go and buy another house within a couple of months. So we've got some lender guidelines that we have to follow through there.
Just need a little time in between.
The point in keeping the property is that, one, we're so short on inventory for rentals right now, and housing, that keeping the equity in it, and the perfect storm is the interest rates. Like, even if you refinance that non-owner occupied with the amount of equity that you have in it, you're going to be somewhere in that 3.25 for a 30-year fixed. Right. And your payment's going to be somewhere around that, I'm going to say $1,500 a month range. Yeah. What's the HOA fee?
It is $245.
Okay. I am not a big fan of HOAs when, as far as the fee, because it really doesn't, you're paying for people's utilities, some of those things. In Scottsdale, you might be a little bit better off, and because you already own it, you couldn't go out and replace that property by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, you could sell it, get a great price for it, right? But it doesn't do anything for your long term.
Okay.
So, if you look back at a lot of people right now in the market, if they would have taken the advice or known what that option was or that strategy was to keep their house, there are some people that sold their house 18 months ago that could have sold their house this year and put their kids through college.
It's so crazy.
Like, seriously.
It's true, though. Those are real numbers. It's amazing the difference in what people could have
just
earned.
by keeping it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, like in your case, do you have any fear of keeping the house as a rental, like bad tenants, those types of things?
No.
Does it any fear involved with repairs, maintenance? Like, you feel like no big deal?
I don't know how to do any of those things, so I call people now to have those things taken care of. So
any fear going around, like with COVID and people not paying rents?
I think that's always in a rental scenario, COVID or otherwise, you still have a risk factor of people not paying their rent.
So I think that, a lot of people that I talk to don't want to go down the rental road or keeping something for a couple of different reasons. One, they fear horror stories with tenants. And I think that can be avoided. I think horror stories with tenants usually come from people trying to self-manage. So they try to find their own tenant. They try to manage the property themselves, and some of that creates problems.
Right.
Even for me, with the amount of homes that we own, I don't manage or find my own tenants. I really gave it to a specialty company, which is a property management company. It happens to be the company that my mom owns, but they do a phenomenal job, Valentine Property Management, and they've been doing it for 20 years. But the laws for the tenants seems to favor the tenant. So the leases and the different things, the way they're written, the way they're drafted, are all to protect the landlord. And I think that it's I
mean, if somebody just owns one home and they're going to rent it out, why wouldn't they just get like a home warranty? And, I mean, why should somebody do a property management company?
Well, the management company and home warranty are two different things. Home warranty is kind of an insurance policy. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I think too many people, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, they put too much faith in, well, I've got a home warranty, so it's going to cover. The reality is the home warranty is going to cover your big items, maybe. Right. It's not going to cover all the nickel and dime stuff.
But I think it's good for people to know that, right? Like, I think a lot of people would think, oh, I don't need a property management company. If something needs repair, I have a home warranty.
Yeah.
They don't understand the full spectrum of what property management does.
Yeah, I mean, you can go down a whole rabbit hole with the home warranty. Like when we talk to the management company, it's 10 times the work to manage a property with a home warranty, because they call the home warranty. The home warranties don't abide by, like, especially with ACs. Mm-hmm. Like, we've got to fix something within 24 to 48 hours, especially in Phoenix during the summer. So if they're not complying, then you have to find somebody else to do it. And then when they get out there and they decline the work, and then you have to get somebody, it's just phone call after phone call to try to deal with the home warranty. So I've just found it after, the experiences that I've had, I'm better off self-insuring, which is just covering my repairs when they happen. So the management company gives you that peace of mind. The management fees can be anywhere from a flat fee, like our management company is $110 a month, to some people charge an 8 to 10%. So it really just depends on the management. So in your case, when I look at it, and I think right now with the demand in rentals and in Scottsdale, and plus you've got a 1-car garage on yours, I think that you're probably looking at that $2,200 to $2,400 a month. So even after expenses, you're probably going to cash flow somewhere in the $500 to $600 a month range.
Yeah.
Now you have that asset, and this is where I wanted to lead to. So you have that asset. It's sitting there. It's doing its thing. It's worth a bunch of money right now, but I feel that we're all in a place where I don't know any time in the near future that you're going to be able to replace that condo, for the price that you own it for.
Right.
When you talk about, well, I owe $275 on it, and like, well, you can't buy anything for $275 right now.
Yeah. It's like almost 1,600 square feet.
Right. So now you're looking at a home, right? So what price range do you think you're going to be in?
I have no idea. I want something for like $2.
$2.
And it better look real good.
We'll see if we can draw that on the whiteboard for you.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, you're in a great place to keep it rather than sell it. And here's where some of the stuff that people don't see is that when you go to sell it, you're going to spend about 10% of the equity in selling the house, right? So it's a $400,000 house. You're going to spend about $25,000 selling it because you're going to pay a realtor to do it. And I've talked more people out of, selling their homes because I can kind of talk to them from the strategy of keeping it and why they want to keep it. And like I said earlier, some people, they can keep it. There's tax advantages. Yeah. There's all kinds of advantages to owning the rental property rather than selling it. And like I said, if some of the people that I talked to a year, 2 years ago that would have just kept properties.
This is like super exciting because I'm like getting all like, because the market's so tight right now. And a lot of people think they need to stay put. And the reality is you could keep and buy.
Yeah. So, I've had a lot of conversations recently with people like, well, we're having the issue of, what happens when we sell, and now how am I supposed to find something to buy?
Right.
Because it's such a hard market to find something to buy versus, well,
I'm going to be homeless.
You should be talking to, your lender. Can you pull some equity out, and can you keep the house for a long-term asset, and can you qualify to go ahead and purchase from that standpoint? And I think that that's one of the greatest strategies that you could possibly deploy in this market. And so many people are not,
oh my gosh,
not seeing that piece.
You and I have these conversations so frequently, and they're usually a bigger conversation, and this is like a snippet in it. But this is such a huge snippet, especially in our market right now, for people to know that they could be creating so much more wealth and creating income, cash flowing. Like, it's one thing to keep your house as a rental because you think, okay, it's going to appreciate, and at some point in time, it's going to be worth X even more, right? It's going to continue to increase. But people forget about the cash flow piece.
Right.
It actually creates income.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, though.
I know, but even if it didn't, it's still great because it's appreciating asset. But I think it's so cool for people to really think about the fact that they could be creating more wealth, creating additional income. They could keep their properties and then they can still buy. I think the harder piece is that buy piece, but
right. But I also think it comes down to what is the ideal rental property, because some people that are selling, there's certain things they should just go ahead and sell rather than keep. Because right.
Agreed.
So we had one of our investors in here yesterday, and we were talking through some stuff, and I remember a house that he bought as an investment property. So just assume he kept it, right? He lived in it, but it was 4,000 square feet in Buckeye, and the tenants, like, there was almost a new tenant in every year. So the bigger the house, the worse your expenses are, because 4,000 square feet of paint, carpet, 3 AC units. So there is some strategy in, should this or does this make the ideal rental property going forward?
That's such a good call right there. Like, I just assume everything could be a good rental, but you're right. Like, my place would be a great rental just because it's my place.
Well, but yours is low maintenance. I'm not real excited about the HOA fee because that's a huge, like, it's a suck on the cash flow.
Totally.
Right. But the offset to some of that is the exterior maintenance, the roof, some of the other things that come with it that are great. So there is a little bit of offset there. But when you get down into, hey, what should I be thinking about?
Yeah.
So, we talked about it on the investor mindset, I don't know, a couple episodes ago about, what does make the ideal rental property. Yeah. So I looked at one yesterday, actually, for Kyle and Eden, thinking it might work for them because the sellers wanting to buy 600. They've got a house, needs a little bit of repair. It's in Central Phoenix, but I'm looking at the house and they're willing to sell it to me at a discount rather than potentially keeping the house as a rental, because that's their only thought process.
Okay.
And I think as agents, that's an outside the box strategy that keeps them from selling the house and it gets them immediately with the lender to prepare them to buy while keeping this.
Okay.
And so I think that's an important outside the box strategy right now. And we have such a huge demand.
Oh my gosh.
For rentals.
So bad. Yeah.
And the rental income is up 30% over the last couple of years, and probably even more so now just because of the demand.
Totally.
The same houses we were renting 5 years ago are literally like almost 100% more now than they were then. Stuff that we were renting for $800 5 years ago now rents for $1,800. So, just looking at that aspect, and then again, you've got the tax advantages and some of those other things, and you have the appreciation factor. Now, when I talk to my investors, I typically try to tell them, please do not bank on appreciation, because appreciation, this maybe will translate. We'll transition into the whole. You're
like marble mouth today.
I know. Transition into kind of the stocks. I was having a great conversation with Kyle yesterday about I've recently entered into like buying some stocks. I got me a Robinhood app, and I'm a big stock guy now. I've never bought stocks in my life.
Yeah. You have the Robinhood app.
I got the Robinhood app. So for you guys, like, I'm gonna. Yeah, there's gonna be some people on here like, dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I think it's awesome.
I never said I did.
You're like, I'm a big stock guy now. Self-proclaimed. I love it.
I recently started buying stocks, which I know nothing about.
Okay.
Other than I just started putting some money into companies that I guess I knew and liked.
Yeah. Or somebody else bought them too.
Yeah. somebody else bought them too. I mean, I was thinking about GameStop and
Yeah.
but I started looking at what's in my investment account versus a down payment on a house and trying to correlate what happened in the last 12 months with my real estate portfolio and some of my investors' portfolio and how it relates to the stock market. Because some people are like, I don't do real estate because you've got tenants and you've got problems and you've got all these things. So I wanted to kind of give the background piece of what I looked at and realized yesterday is that, so I'm doing the numbers, and last year my real estate portfolio increased by, I'm going to say, an average of 30%. Okay. So 30% increase across my portfolio on a $5 million portfolio. It's $1.5 million is what that stock increased.
Okay.
Now, in order for me to make that $1.5 million in the stock market, I would have to have $5 million in good stocks that produced a 30% somehow. Like you'd be a rock star,
right?
To produce like the Wolf of Wall Street, selling everything. Now, the difference is that my $5 million portfolio, even if you had 20% down, so $1 million,
okay,
you would have invested $1 million, but your rate of return came from the overall value of the portfolio, not just what you put into it. So what I mean by that is that I got the appreciation on $5 million worth of real estate that I only spent $1 million on.
Okay.
And that 30% increase came on the total value of the portfolio, not just on the $1 million I put into it. I think that's where a lot of people miss the value of real estate and the investment in it, coupled with perfect storm, the rates right now. To buy something with 20% down, 30-year fixed with a 3% rate with non-owner occupied, it's not always, so many of the investors are like, I need to find a deal. Well, actually, you need to buy something that is creating an asset you're putting 20% down on, and it's seeing some appreciation over time. But what they also don't see is that you're buying a stock for 20% of its value and getting the full return on the $300,000 asset. And somebody else is paying the other $260,000 or $240,000 off over time that you didn't have to put into it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Did I lose you? Because you look confused.
Is there going to be any graphics in this episode?
Right.
Let me get out my abacus.
Abacus, huh?
No, I understand. I think it's a pretty cool comparison, that whole stock market analogy with the real estate piece.
So here's the other part to it, because you had mentioned earlier the cash flow piece.
Yeah.
Sometimes the cash flow may not be the necessary piece. And I think it's
just a nice plus.
It's a nice plus, but we will, as normal everyday Americans, we will put $500 a month into our 401ks, our self-directed IRAs, whatever. It's not producing any cash flow right now. You're just throwing it into the abyss and hope that the guy on the other end behind the desk, like Kyle over there, is getting a good rate of return. You have no control over it. Right?
Right.
Some rental properties that I own do not cash flow. But it's me putting $200 into that property on a monthly basis that is no different than putting in a stock. And so that's where I have a hard time understanding, where some people are like, oh, well, it doesn't cash flow, or my cash on cash return. Yeah. I'm like, you'll go put $500 a month in the stock market. It's not cash flowing.
Right.
If I told you, hey, Bernie, you can buy a house and I need you a $300,000 house, you're going to have to put $500 a month into it, which is $6,000 a year. Okay. The house last year would have done a 30% return. And, let's just say it's $60,000 that house raised in value. Mm-hmm. And you only had to put in $6,000 to hold it. What's this is
it's basic math, right? I mean, it's kind of like, of course.
It's basic math, but some people want to equate it like they don't equate the same theory in stocks.
It's so true.
I have to put $5,000 to get some sort of return if I'm lucky. The only difference in real estate and the stock is that if the stock goes to zero, your $5,000's
totally
gone.
Done.
Right?
Totally done.
If my house doesn't appreciate this year,
you still have a house.
I still have a house.
Yeah.
I still have something I can sell. I still have equity. Totally. I still have something I can live in.
Yep.
I still have something that's giving me a tax advantage. I still have all these things that come with owning that house. And that's where if you took 2008 and the crash that happened, if the investors had 30-year fixed mortgages and they would have just held and said, okay, I'm going to put a couple $100 a month into this, the houses went down and they shot all the way back up beyond where they were in 2008.
Yeah.
And the rents have increased. And so, some people talk about the stock market like it's the long game. Well, real estate should be the same way.
Right.
It's a lot of self-control for me as an investor to not look at my portfolio and go, oh, look, my stock is through the roof this year and I'm out. It's the long game.
Yeah.
The discipline to hold on to it, not look at it like, yeah, it's increased huge this year, right?
Right.
But it also has the ability to go down 10 or 15% down the road.
Right.
It could. I don't know if it will.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a crystal ball, but here's what I do know. There's 50 people living in the homes, paying those mortgages off, that will leave me with a paid off stock at the end of the day that I didn't have to put $300,000. So in your case, going all the way back to your condo, if you look at 20 years on the eve of your 70th birthday.
Stop it. Stop it.
Your condo.
Which, by the way, my condo, I bought it in 2003. So it went through, I held it through all of the distressed. I mean, at one point, I think it was like going for like $150,000 and I owed $2 something on it. Right. And I was like, I can afford the payments. It'll come back full circle.
So I love that right now. And here's why some people.
I knew you'd love this.
Some people are like, and we already know those people, they're like, well, the market's going to crash, so I'm going to wait. And those people that waited on the sidelines, they're royally screwed right now because they waited so long. But here's the other piece. If you buy right now with the way rates are, even though it's more expensive than you want to pay for it, you feel like, oh, what if the market crashes? Does it really freaking matter? Because you still, like you said, you still paid your payment. You still needed a place to live. It didn't matter what it was worth. You kept holding it, which a lot of people do with stocks. Hey, I bought it for $5,000 and now it's down to $1,000. I don't really have a choice but to hold it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just the correlation that I've seen. And I wanted to kind of understand what somebody that was investing in stocks felt like what they were going through. And now I'm correlating with real estate, the different things. And I just.
Such a different behavior, right? Well, the whole mindset towards what people are willing to do in the stock market and how they don't necessarily, they think differently about real estate.
Right.
It's so funny.
So
such a great comparison.
So I'm just looking at it from that standpoint. And I know that a lot of people are looking at, the stock market over the last couple of months and they're like, oh, if I had bought Bitcoin at $30,000, it'd be worth, I would have made $20,000. Yeah, but you would have had to have $30,000 to do it.
Yeah.
If you had the same $30,000 and you would have bought a home 2 years ago.
It's true.
Your stock would have gone up more than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
No, I do believe in diversification. That's why I'm doing it.
Well, and it's a different kind of fluidity in the money, right? It's a different kind of, what's the right word for that? What would you call that?
What?
It's like the way you can get the money out, right? It's more liquid.
Right. It's more liquid. Yeah, you can sell it and have liquidity versus, having to borrow against a house. But you do have something there that, and that's what I like about the asset class of owning real estate is that you do have stuff that you can sell, you can exchange, you can do so much with it down the road, who knows, when you're 70, you could say, hey, you know what? I'm ready to get out of this rental property and I want to go buy a condo in Hawaii, and you sell it and you 1031 exchange that money into another asset. You're still not selling it. You're still not being taxed on it.
Yeah.
You still have all this depreciation. So I just wanted people to see and hear some of the correlation.
It's a great perspective.
To not be so price heavy and worried about the cash flow in an asset. If you can afford to put a little bit into it, a little bit at a time, it will be fine over time. And I know a lot of people would say the complete opposite, don't buy anything that's not cash flowing. I've got a good friend of mine that is like a big financial guy. And, I remember having conversations with him. In fact, several properties that I tried to sell him years ago, he never would because they just didn't cash flow. I'm like, but you'll put shit into the stock market that doesn't give you any return.
Yeah.
And those properties that I would have sold him 3 years ago would have been worth double now than what they were then. So don't be afraid to take that risk in potentially buying real estate. But I think in this market, you have to understand that it's not as good as it was a couple of years ago, because you're going to have to pay retail for that investment property. You may not be able to buy as much equity as we used to, but you could still do your part in securing something that makes the ideal rental property.
Totally. No, I love that whole idea, the whole comparison. It's like every house could be its own little ticker symbol.
A what?
It's like every house could be a ticker symbol. It's like its own little stock.
It is its own little stock.
Yeah.
I could look at my...
You could buy, you could sell, you could...
Absolutely.
You could take money out of it.
It gives you a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
When owning those things. And if you can look at the assets from the long-term standpoint and not so much the appreciation, but looking at somebody else paying it down, it could make a substantial impact in your future, especially those like... I think about some of these young people that did buy houses a couple of years ago. I will tell you my greatest regret being in my 20s and selling that first house and getting $100,000 check back when the market had skyrocketed like it is now. I still don't know what happened to that $100,000. And that house would be paid off today, and it would still be a great investment property. And I could have sold that house, put both my kids through college.
That's crazy.
Now, had I just let it sit.
I know. I did that with my first property too. I was like, oh, I'm going to sell it.
And the difference is I didn't have to put $300,000 in that house to get that return. I put $3,000 down at that time, and that $100,000 was paid off, and it appreciated by $200,000. So I leave you with that complete mind of real estate today. And thanks for letting me go through that. So when are we going to look at houses? So let's just wrap this up in a little bow. This is really where my passion is. I love real estate. I love the traditional aspect, but more importantly, I love helping people build wealth and understanding what they can do, and really walking them through that, down that path.
Like explaining everything the way you do is huge.
Like explaining to you so that you don't make the mistake of, yes, I sold the house. That's great. You got your money, but now what? Yes, you can put it in another house. Now it's just dead equity sitting in there. And so, guys, if there's something that I can do for you, there's a link in the show notes to my Calendly appointment. So if you guys want a real estate strategy and you're thinking about, hey, I'm thinking about selling a house, or I want to buy a house, I will do the best I can on the buy side. It is really hard out there, but the sell side, I think that you really should know all of your options and what it looks like. And if you'd like a free, Zoom call or phone call just to kind of touch base on that, and does your property make sense, I'd love to connect with you on that. It's really important. And, for you agents out there, look, guys, follow me on Instagram, especially on my stories. Well, both Facebook and Instagram stories are tied. But I'm really trying to let everybody know what this stuff looks like on a regular basis through my stories, so they can see the different things that are happening. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.